Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a review of Tamiya's new Panzer IV G early production. Tamiya has produced a lot of Panzer IV kits over the years, and they're generally good, but you know, the old vintage ones are kind of vintage, oversimplified in places. The new toolings, like this one, give you much better detail, but they still preserve the simplicity of construction that Tamiya is noted for. So it turns out to be a fun build with a nicely detailed result. The kit gives you two marking options. A tank from the 21st Panzer Division at El Alamein, autumn 1942, or a 12th Panzer Division tank from northern Russia in the autumn of 1942. So you can paint it tan or you can paint it gray. I don't normally build a lot of German stuff, but I had the opportunity to review some ammo paints for Afrika Korps figures. So I got the kit for the figures so I could review the paints. And once I finished the figures for the review, I thought they looked kind of silly with nothing to sit on, so I built the tank. The paints were provided to me by IPMS USA for the purpose of that review. So if you want to look at the review I did of the paints, that's on the IPMS review website. I'll put a link to that in the description. In years past, the figures in Tamiya kits were sometimes the weak points of the kits, that they were done without much finesse or imagination. But the figures that are coming in Tamiya kits these days are very nicely sculpted, and they have very natural looking poses. I wonder if they were actually 3D scanned from real people wearing period uniforms. The folds in the fabric and the postures and the facial expressions come out really nicely. And I've noticed that the better a figure is sculpted, the easier it is to paint. The exterior of the tank is nicely detailed. Except for the gun breech, there's really no interior detail. So if you want to pose your tank with the hatches open, you will either need to scratch build some interior or get something from aftermarket, or plug the holes with figures. Instead of getting the flexible rubber band style tracks like came in the old kits, this new kit has rigid link and length tracks, which are really nice for getting good detail and getting this realistic sag in between the return rollers. In this kit, instead of molding the upper and lower runs as a single piece, each of those runs is made up of multiple smaller pieces. I assume that's so they can do different versions of the Panzer IV suspension for different lengths of vehicles. But it makes assembly a little bit more complicated than I had hoped. Although for the upper run, they do include an assembly jig so that the sag will come out just right. So that's a handy feature. So for installing the tracks, in step 5, Tamiya has you glue on the return rollers. In step 10, you install the tracks. And in step 18, you install the upper hull and the fenders. So you might be tempted to attach the upper hull and return rollers before installing the tracks to make painting and weathering easy. but you should know that there's not enough space in between the fenders and the return rollers to slide the tracks in from the side afterward. So I would recommend building the tank up except for the return rollers, and don't glue those on until you're ready to install the tracks. One part of the kit that I didn't like was the tow cables they give you. Tamiya gives you a length of flexible thread, and then the eyelets are separate plastic pieces. And the backside is notched so that you can glue the thread inside of it. But it leaves an ugly seam and gap on the backside of the eyelet. And on mine, I slathered super glue on there and then filed it to match the shape on the other side of the eyelet. But it just seems like a clumsy way of doing things. Although once you do get it done, it looks the part. So on this build, I went ahead and used the kit supplied decals, and I think they worked out just fine. Over the years, I've heard a lot of people complain about Tamiya decals, that they're too thick to use. I've had sort of a hit or miss experience with them myself, even though I'm using the Tamiya Mark Fit. Sometimes it seems like they disappear under the clear coat, and sometimes it seems like they come out way too thick. But I was listening to a conversation between Drew Manton and Spencer Pollard over on the Interesting Modeling Company channel. And if you haven't heard of Spencer Pollard, he frequently builds Tamiya kits for Tamiya Model Magazine. So he kind of knows what he's doing when it comes down to using Tamiya decals. And being an Englishman, he gets his decal water out of the teapot. And he says it's just a matter of using hot water. So I tried that. I heated up my decal water in the teapot, and sure enough, the carrier film disappeared. I don't know why that works, but it seems to work. But be careful with the hot water. You should probably use tweezers to dip the decals, not your fingers. The two different marking options that you can build from the kit do have minor differences in which parts you use and where you drill locating holes. So you need to decide which one you're doing before you start building, and pay attention that you're clipping the correct parts. Some of them will look similar, but won't be right for the version you're building. Once I made up my mind of which version I was building, I went through the instructions and crossed out in red ink whatever it was I was not supposed to do. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't enjoy the video, well, thanks for your patience. We'll see you next time. Bye.